Welcome back to Burn the Ship, the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs and professionals to go all in on their business. Once again, I'm your host, Ezra Brown, and without further ado, I'm going to allow my guest to introduce himself.
My name is Dan Mirgon, President of Dan Mirgon Associates, and we do business and financial strategy for business owners, small business owners, since 1982.
Awesome. So Dan, that's something to go in and kind of give people give you control to, kind of control their business and help them out, help them grow it. How did you get into that? Has it always been what you were into, or was it just kind of something that just kind of fell to you naturally? Just kind of give us that story of paint us that picture.
Well, I appreciate that. It starts with mowing lawns and doing newspaper routes and stuff like that as a 6 and 7-year-old kid, trying to figure out where money could come from. Turns into executive roles in the restaurant and hotel industry back in the late 70s, early 80s. Transitioned to financial advice, and that turned into a lot of business advice and consulting, helping get the company grow to grow and do the right thing. That's the hardest thing for people.
Right.
After 47 years and having started 5 companies, raised my own capital for some of them, sold some of them, been doing a lot of executive coaching and business development. A few years ago, had a conversation with a doctor, and I asked him, how long, are you going to run your business or your practice? And what are you going to do afterwards? And without missing a beat, he goes, I have no idea. I don't know what it's worth. I have no clue what I'd be doing after this. I'll just probably work the rest of my life. And I realized I've been hearing that from a majority of our business clients. So I work with typically business owners, small business owners, in the $1 million to $10 or $20 million range. The big guys have hundreds of self-attracting advisors.
Right.
This is a very underserved market to help them do one thing, and I call it our third act process. It's to make the company profitable, which means not just paying your monthly bills, but profitable from a buyer's perspective.
Right.
Healthy as an organization, which means it can run without you. You're not overly dependent on 1 or 2 customers,
Right.
and marketable, thinking like a buyer when you present your company to the market.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of reasons why that's important, and I can detail them. I don't know how much. If you got 3 days, we can go through this. But
hey, look, you got all the time in the world.
The real issue here is people start their business. I call that Act 1, and that's from startup through survival. If they've survived and they can call themselves an operating business, that's cool. They go into stage 2 or Act 2, which is growth and significance. We're trying to become a bigger, more important footprint in the world, right? And then we get into what I'm calling the third act, is transitioning that ownership the right way. And that I say it that way because we're finishing the first quarter of the 24th century. And most of the baby boomers, of which I'm one, got their college education in the 70s, and that's, they took some business classes, and they think that's how they're going to sell their business,
right,
based on that knowledge. And that becomes a real eye-opener when they realize that 82% of those 150,000 companies plus a year that are trying to go to market just from that generational group, the baby boomers, are not getting sold.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, but in most cases, it's because they're simply not ready for a buyer pool that is sitting back there in a catbird seat saying, you know what, there's so many products out there, companies, I can be very selective. And I want this ROI, and I want this nature, and I want this health condition to the organization. I don't want to have to do a lot. Oh, and if the company can finance the sale, I'll be glad to buy the company. And
right.
the seller's not thinking that way. They're thinking, I built this thing from nothing in my garage, and look at it now. Isn't it wonderful? And we need to go, yeah, it's wonderful. But you got to step into the third act. You got to start thinking about, right? Because the fourth act, this is the part that's critical, is post ownership role, we call it retirement for some of us, myth for me, um, is this idea that the money from the sale funds your retirement. And if you don't have a clue on the real value of your business today, how do you project the future?
Right.
And most CPAs are giving you the minimal EBITDA or earnings before tax, that number, so that you pay the minimal tax and stay out of
Right.
jail, presumably. That's not what a buyer's looking at. Nobody wants to pay a
Mm-hmm.
$500,000 salary when in your industry you're worth 250. So you have to
Right.
recast that. So there's a lot of reasons that it's hard to sell a business these days,
Mm-hmm.
particularly privately held company in that range.
Right.
And so we have process that we've developed over the years, tools that we've gathered to really just sit down as an executive coach and peer
Mm-hmm.
and just say, okay, I'm a couple of weeks down the road beyond you in most cases, the people we're working with. Let's figure out where you are, what you really need, and let's figure out where the gaps are, and let's figure out how to fix them. Because here's the difference, and we show them their preliminary value now. And when we do this work, I mean, the real numbers are like the average multiple, which is a multiplier of that EBITDA number.
Right.
That's what people tend to buy. That's how they think about the value of their business
Right.
is 3.4. So
Mm-hmm.
if you got $1 million EBITDA company, somebody's might offer you 3.4. But if we fix some things, you could be 7.1 or 7.5 within a
Right.
year or two. Now, you're going to throw away $4 million because it's hard. I'll buy your company for 3 million for right now,
Mm-hmm.
because I got a team of management people who would love to walk in there and make that thing, you know, $7 or $8 million in 3 years.
Right.
And the owner goes, wait a minute, that's my money. Well, then let's get it figured out. So that's what we do.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's awesome. Dan, it seems like you are a wealth of knowledge in this industry, especially just being around it and having probably a ton of reps and doing it too. It comes with the territory. But really, what would you say has been kind of your favorite part of the journey? As it's been, like, I know what you are now, but through this time of doing all this consulting for these businesses, what would you say has been your favorite part, most enjoyable for you?
Well, we all know that we don't really learn anything without failure, right? And just because somebody else has had success, there's no guarantee you're going to have that success.
I'm in sales. I see it every day.
But for me, um, the comfort, I guess the encouragement when an owner makes that mental shift from busy manager to CEO with an asset that has value, and then once they've really figured out they can't do it alone, they need somebody with experience and tools and a relationship pool that's bigger than theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they step into it and it works. To
Right.
me, that's the most satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't start out that way. You have to figure out kind of as you go, as guy in my seat, what works and what doesn't, and most of it doesn't.
Right.
And there's a lot of advisors out there who don't have 47 years and 5 companies and all these credentials and certifications after his name and all that stuff. And that's not about Dan's ego. It's about you never get critical advice from a rookie.
Right.
Okay. Somebody who's been in the business 20 years is great. But if you got a choice of 40 or 50 years in experience, go with the second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not so old school. Nothing's really new. It's just the package and how you deliver it.
Right. Just
Okay.
what bow you put on top of it.
Exactly.
Huh. That makes sense though. And that was what kind of gave me something I wanted to ask was, whenever you go into a fit, how is it that you see, obviously you have your different processes. How do you see the difference in somebody that it'll make that they can kind of make that immediate shift, or somebody that you kind of have to kick the rock over a couple times to get them to really do it?
I learned something a very long time ago that says people only do what they really want to do,
Yeah,
and
you're right.
you cannot change their mind if they don't want to do it. So in the early parts of people's careers, you have and you're hungry and you got to feed the babies and make the house payment. You're tempted to take on what I'm going to call PTA clients, paying the asset clients, right?
Yeah,
You get to a point where you've passed the need to do that, is where discernment comes in as to whether or not this person's actually going to act or not. If they're not motivated, committed, can fund it, and are coming back and saying, okay, what do I do first, second, third? I mean, we lay out the map, and if they're not looking 3 steps ahead, going, how do I do this? How do I do that? That's not buying. If they're not saying that, that's not buying behavior.
right,
And if I don't see buying behavior and commitment, and I have to like them. I mean, if they're
right,
jerks, I'm I'm not here to help people I don't like.
right. I I agree.
So hopefully I
Huh.
answered that.
Yeah, no, I like that, and I like the I like the pain in the assets. I'm definitely gonna use that one.
Well,
That one's
I'm
gonna
just
be.
here for you to steal my lines, Chad.
I look. I don't know if you've coined that one yet, but you should.
No, no, we coined the third act thing, but
I hear you. I hear you. But and what kind of your process is? I've seen, I talk to people in your industry
mhm.
a couple times, in my time doing the podcast, but also just through networking stuff of trying to be in that same sphere of trying to get in with people like you to help with, because you have a wealth of knowledge and you have a wealth of people that respect your word. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
what you guys do is definitely awesome, and sounds like you've had a lot of success, and it's cool to hear. And also, we're gonna go on the successes. We're gonna go to the opposite side of it. What have you not been so good at? When what took you time to get good at?
uh, well, that was a twofold question, but I'll go with the last first.
Yeah, yeah. Go to the last first.
Um, I don't do peddler, and one of the things that happened when I first went into the financial advice business, I joined an insurance company, got a securities license, an insurance license, and I was going to be, that guy, right? Until I realized nobody likes those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole method of getting business was here's the white pages and a telephone. And I said, that was not in the brochure when I signed up. That's not what I do. I don't do peddler. So the hardest part, I guess, over this entire process, even though there's been lots of frustrations and pitfalls over the years,
Mm-hmm.
is I work really hard to create an environment where somebody understands that I'm here to help them solve the problems that they're too well that they're not able to solve themselves.
Right.
And when they're committed to getting that solved, when that problem gets bad enough and they see the risk of not addressing it, then I can help.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that. I
So
feel like you had some more to elaborate on that. I feel like you wanted to go a little longer on that
now I got old. I forgot the first part of the question. So
one. No,
no.
that's awesome. That's awesome. What would you say your ideal client is? I know you kind of gave me that threshold of money
Hmm.
of what you're looking for, but really, what is your ideal client? Do you got a niche? Do you got, what vertical? Do you go after a certain vertical? You got a niche in a vertical? Kind of what does it look like?
Um, Everybody says the riches are in the niches, and to a certain extent, I would agree with that, except in our case.
Mm-hmm.
The profile of the client, I think, is more important to me. So they
Mm-hmm.
need to have been seasoned enough in business. A 22-year-old who thinks he's going to flip his great idea and Mark Cuban's going to walk in and write him a check is nuts.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have, I'm sorry, that's a little harsh. He might not be nuts, but he's naive.
Right.
Okay. The guy who's been in business 30 years, 40 years, thinking about the fact that, mama's got this list for him that he needs to accomplish before he goes boots up, right? That guy listens more. That guy understands that he's got an asset if he thinks about it that way. If he sees it as an asset that can be polished and presented in a market that's tough, he's willing to do what it takes.
Right.
So Typically, those companies are $1 million to $10 million in top line revenue.
Mm-hmm.
We go through the process of current present day assessment of not only the value, health, and marketability of the company,
Right.
but his personal wealth plan, because that is, I mean, the business is in 80% of the circumstances funding a majority of the retirement.
Right.
And then secondly, helping him understand how to answer the question, what are you going to do Monday morning after you sell your business? See, that's the harder question, I think, for most people. We can
Right.
understand the financial transaction, we can understand the financial planning process, but how are we going to stay relevant?
Right.
How are we going to become important after we have money and actually after we have time?
Mm-hmm.
Because men, particularly, are built for that. We're not built to just drive a
Sit
motorhome
around.
around the country and do nothing.
Right.
Okay, now that's nice a certain part of the time. So I asked one guy who's telling me, well, I'm going to play golf. Great, I play golf too. How much time do you have for golf? Well, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
how many hours a week are you working right now? He said 60. I said, okay. How many rounds of golf are you going to play? Three or four? So how many hours
How?
is that? 12, 15? Yeah. What are you going to do with the other 45 hours?
Sleep.
And he looked at me with like deer in the headlights and went, I don't know. I'm sure my wife will come up with something. I said, you want to be in charge of that? You want to collaborate with her on a bigger plan? You've got to start thinking about it now.
Right.
So if the business isn't understood correctly and you're guessing about its value as you plan your financial picture
Mm-hmm.
and then ultimately your life after, the whole thing could implode and you could become a Walmart greeter. Is that your career plan?
Right.
They're very nice
Yeah.
people, but I don't want to be one.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's. I mean, that's a good way to put it, though. I like the sales pitch in that too, because that was savvy. That was good. That was good. You're pulling heartstrings and everything.
Well, again, I have a choice of being nice to people or telling them the truth. Which one do you want?
Well, the truth's gonna get you more referrals in the long run. The people's
I'll
gonna
I'll
trust
tell
you
you the
more.
truth as nicely as I can,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not here to blow smoke up anybody's skirt. When I
Right.
started my businesses, I didn't have a me. There was nobody coming alongside and saying, "Hey, here's how you can stay out of that pit, and here's how you
Right.
can leverage that."
Right.
So all the messaging that I give has at its core some sense of personal. Um, the seed of it came from that. Let me just say it that
Right.
way. So
Right.
you know, people
That
just
makes
need
sense.
somebody who can walk down the street with them and say, and put their arm around their shoulder and say, we can get through this. It's going to
Right.
suck. This is how it's going to feel. But here's paint the picture down the road, not just on the front of the hood of the car.
Right. It's why the rear view mirror is a lot smaller than the windshield right there.
Absolutely.
That's crazy. Yeah. And like, what'd you say, Dan? Because like, especially from building companies on your own, but what would you say is kept you kind of out of that pit because people behind the viewing this could see the same thing. But what kind of helps you stay out of that pit? Because everybody's gonna get them this life. We're in a life cycle. You're gonna get in lows. You're gonna be in highs. It doesn't matter where you're at in life. You could be the richest man in the world, still be in a low.
I learned tenacity a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the characteristics of most people who have started the company and kind of gotten it to where it's going to be potentially sellable have that sense of I'm not going to go work for somebody else. I don't play well with children in the sandbox. This is my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the pit of despair is not a good place to be,
Right.
but you do find yourself there. And when in those circumstances, faith in God, great wife, peers that get it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to not let yourself hole up in a hole, roll up in a ball and hide.
Right.
But I did a lot of charitable consulting over the years in addition to business development. And one of the things I learned through that process is that you need to be a humble servant warrior as a leader.
Right.
So humble means you can't do it all by yourself.
Hmm.
It's not about you.
Right.
And you're there to serve people and help them get what they want. You know the Zig Ziglar line: if you help help people get what they want, you'll get everything you want, right?
Hmm.
But you have to be a warrior too. You have to be willing to fight the fight, not as an angry jerk, but as a guy who's going to say, okay, I got knocked on my butt on that one. I'm going to get up and find a better way to do it and just
Right.
keep going.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense though, because that's pretty much what it is. They say hard work and determination will get you anywhere you want to go. I
As
always
long
say
as you
it's
got the
almost
time,
cliche.
right?
Yeah, I almost say it's almost cliche, but it's not, because it's true in anything you do in life. But I say it's cliche because everybody says it. You
Yeah.
got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it. And what would you say, Dan, has been, what's been your favorite part of the journey so far?
I guess the best answer to that, there's several, is it has given my wife Sue and I and our kids the freedom to be able to say, we're going to take a bunch of time out. In fact, this is the last actual week I'm working this year.
Hmm.
We're shutting down through the second. I mean, we have control on our time, and
Right.
time is that commodity that, I mean, you can remake money and you can remake your health and you can remake a lot of things, but you waste time, you'll never get it back.
Agreed, man. It's our most precious commodity.
And as you get into like the third act age range, the point of saying, okay, I learned how to, in elementary through college, I learned how to um, function in a world. I understand what people think, and then I turned it into a career, and it built this thing. And the third act is, I want to finish well.
Right.
I don't want to have people look at me and go, wow, that's a shame, right? Now I don't do that for ego's sake. I do that for reality's sake. An
Right.
engaged mind that's acting on stuff keeps you vibrant, keeps you
Hmm.
valuable, gives you the ability to take the things you've learned and influence people to protect and help and grow other lives.
Hmm.
So the call to use what you've gained um, in my age range has gotten a lot louder than it was when
Right.
I was in my 30s and 40s and 50s.
Right.
So does that answer that? I hope.
Yeah. No, most definitely. Because I mean, that's a very precious thing though, is because you have gotten that time, and that's pretty much the end goal. I feel like that should be the end goal for everybody, is to be able to work and be able to have your time. You know,
Well, I think part of that, um,
that's why I chose the industry I'm in.
yeah, I think part of that is people have their long-term view is right here.
Hmm.
And okay, you have to do really well right here.
Right.
But what's at the end of the hood and what's down the road? And if you're not, I guess the cheap way to answer that is, I don't know, nobody can figure that out. Or you can go the other extreme and say, I can control the world and I can be this.
Right.
No, 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 no. I don't know what your worldview is, but I still believe there's a personal God who's in control of the whole thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if we try to tell him what he's going to do on our behalf, we tend to get lessons.
Yeah. Absolutely. For lack of a better term, yeah. So this that we get, yes, most definitely. No, don't tell me we lost him.
On what I can see,
Oh,
and
there we
that
go.
and that's one of the problems with owning a business. You think of it as, I'm the business owner, meaning I have to make all the decisions, versus I own a business. I have to make it valuable.
Yeah.
And those are
That's a good way to put it.
two starkly different philosophies.
Very. It's crazy. I haven't heard it put like that. The second way is just say, I have a business, how to make this thing run, operate without me. I haven't
Yeah.
thought about it in that sense, because I mean, you always hear people, business coaches, people saying, "Hey, do you make your business do this on its own or this and that?" Like, well, it's well, explain to me what you mean by that, and there's no explanation behind it, just some story they learned from an online coach.
Well, yeah. And then I guess just to finish this out, the idea that too many people are teaching or pushing tactics, and very few people are actually helping you develop your personal strategy.
Right. Because everybody's different.
Well, it's easy to push tactics when you don't want to take the time and get down to the personal level and say, okay, Ezra, why'd you start your business? What were you hoping for? If
Right.
it doesn't work, how's it going to impact you personally, financially, emotionally, right?
Yeah.
And that's the level at which a business owner makes decisions about
Yeah.
buying, starting, keeping, selling, whatever they're going to do.
Yeah.
So you have to get down to that level. And on the strategy side, when I ask people, why'd you start your business? There's a lot of different answers, but I didn't have any choice, didn't have any options. I didn't want to work for Crazy Bob. I mean, if your audience has never read E-Myth Revisited, you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Gerber's book on the guy who works for, let's call him Bob. He's a great technician doing wonderful things within the company, making a good salary until he wakes up one day, has what Michael Gerber calls an entrepreneurial seizure, and says, "Why am I making all this money for this guy? I should be making it for me, right?" And then he goes home and tells his wife, "Look, we're gonna borrow from the 401k. We're gonna cut off the vacations. We're gonna take a second on the house. We're gonna start this thing in the garage." And it works. He goes out and makes a sale and comes home and says, I sold a widget. And she goes, great,
Right.
go do it again. But now he's got a bill for it. He's got to buy the resources for the next one. He's got to go back and sell. And all of a sudden he becomes three people.
Right.
And then he goes and makes the big mistake and sells 10. And his marketing system falls apart because he's
Mm.
got to buy, make, and produce and distribute.
Right.
And he starts hiring people, and that's where the thing comes apart because
Because they
people
don't know what they're doing.
they'll never have the same passion. And so I get a lot of questions from owners. Hey, can you help me with my management team? Probably. What's the problem? Well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. I want you to come in and train them. Well, A, I'm qualified to do that. B, I'm not interested in doing that. Why not?
Yeah.
Well,
Like
who
they don't
hired?
care.
No, it's even deeper than that. It's who hired them. Well, I did. Who gave them their job spec? I did. Who holds them accountable? HR. Play again, Sparky.
Mm-hmm.
If you hired them, you set the job spec. You are the one who has to make the decision as to whether or not they're right for the team, not your
Right.
HR
No.
department. You can't deflect that.
Yeah. No. That makes a ton of sense though. Like yeah, that makes a ton of sense because we have a great work environment here. So, and I feel like that's the reason. Like it's one side of the office is going to be like our customer service side, and one of our owners deals with all that, and then the sales side, one of our owners deals with that because it's just the two ways that they built their business, and that's how they interview. Like they don't interview, we don't go on one side interview. We interview with the one that we're going to be under. You know what I mean? So it's, and then we have a great time in here. We play golf inside the office, have a good time.
Well, you're supposed to have fun, but you're supposed to be productive, and those two can go together.
Absolutely.
Um, but you just have to get the right people in the right seats doing the right thing.
That's Jay
And
talks about it all the time. He's like, man, we're one piece away from just being where I thought we would be. Where I think we need to be, just one piece, which
and
is
yeah,
probably true.
well, I think part of it has to do with hiring right, and you don't hire right until you have a strategy for what you want in that role. And it
Yeah.
isn't just about the job they're going to do. It's about the type of person. I wouldn't hire Tigger to do my books, right?
Yeah.
Because Tigger's an outside influence or whatever, and I'm looking for a detail person, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I have the wrong person because of their personality, I have to be careful the next time I hire someone. Are they
Right.
right for the team? What is their driving motivation in life? How do they communicate? Because there's a lot of different ways to assess all that.
Right.
And then you map all that and say, okay, I have a team where Sally is our bookkeeper, and Sally will never be the MC at our Christmas party because that
Right.
would drive her crazy.
Right.
But I will let Tigger do that and let her do the books, and everybody's happy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because then you got it. Then your environment's gelling. It's working symbiotically almost at that point. They're just moving.
And there you are back to strategy again.
Yeah.
If you're willing to not make the mistakes that other people have made, and you're willing to learn from what you've observed and heard, yeah, my house, we call that wisdom.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And if you're choosing to be unwise, you're not going to have a healthy team. You're not going to have coaches like me wanting to help you. You're not going to
Hmm.
have customers who hang around.
Right.
You may not get investors to want you to help you grow because it's all about you.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. You're probably not the right person or not the ideal person that I want to work with anyway.
And I'm not saying be so selfless that you're milk toast, right? That you're a wallflower.
Right.
But you have to be alert to the fact that you might be the one who put the company together and built the spec,
Hmm.
but you aren't going to do all the work.
Right.
You're hiring family. That's an overused term, but
Right.
if you, I mean, most families don't get along, do they?
Never know.
Sorry about that. Some of these,
Yeah.
yeah. So in a business, you spend more time, awake in the business than you do at home in most cases.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. 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 If it's a successful
You
business anyway.
better better like the people you're working with.
Absolutely. No, that's true. Because you're spending what 9 to 5, 8 hours a day with them.
Well, let's call it 40. Most business owners are 50 to 55.
Yeah. You're
Plus,
spending.
you're not, and you're getting 4 hours at home at night and a couple of weekend days. Do the
And then you're
math.
right back to it on Monday, right back in the
Do
same
the math.
environment, you know?
And you're usually working on part of Saturday. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very true. You know, I don't think about it in that sense. And what would you say? And this is kind of like my last question for you is, what would you say is it was like for you to burn the ship and kind of go all in on your business? You know, going from having businesses and running them to like screw it, I'm gonna go into my first one.
um, I didn't know that I was burning the ship necessarily.
Right,
For me, it was survival. I didn't get necessarily and I'm not begrudging this. I didn't get the uh, nurture and support that most people get at home. My home life as a kid was seriously messed up. And
right.
for getting out into the world and starting my own practice and ultimately businesses, it was just a natural progression of the survival space for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned into um, I'm comfortable here. I've tried going back in occasions and working for other people, and I instantly see because I have this connectedness gene, I can see and strategy gene. I can see where the disconnects and pitfalls are in
Right.
people's business strategy or their
Yeah.
leadership style or whatever. Um, so I don't know if that's answering the question, but uh, once you've had one or two of those, pardon me, in my case, it got to well, I like being free. I like being able to be the one who makes the decisions, even though I recognize the extra responsibility
Right.
and extra pressure. I think that's probably the point at which I mentally burn the ships and says I'm not going to go work for somebody else anymore. And that was
Yeah. No,
probably
that.
two companies in where
No,
I
no,
did that.
that definitely answers the question though. It took you two companies and you'd already burnt the ship twice.
Yeah, well, I like campfires, so
Hey, look, ain't nothing wrong with that. Me too. Me too. But no, really, leave the people with the last word and tell the people tell the people where to find you first, and then leave them with the last word.
well, thank you. Nobody's going to come alongside and help you through these things until you raise your hand and say, I need to have a conversation. So that's what we do. Um, you can find us at mirgonfinancial.com, or you can use the phone number on the background there. And
Awesome, yeah.
basically all I want to do is schedule a Zoom meeting or a phone call, or if you're in the Salt Lake area, we'll sit down and have a cup of coffee or whatever your beverage is for the week. And I just want to hear your heart. Well, what are you trying to do? I don't give advice in those meetings. I'm listening. I'm trying to figure out if they understand their problem well enough to want to get it solved. And I'll ask questions and we'll kind of coach them through that. But if we're just dealing with tire kickers, I got people that will help them. If they're serious about trying to solve those nagging problems that keep them up at night, keep them from being able to make that final decision, I've probably seen it. Hey, I've probably been through it with 5 years and over
Right.
200 companies that we've worked with. So if it's a problem for you, I either have seen a solution or it's not really a problem. And let's talk about figuring out which one it is.
Absolutely. And everybody, Dan's stuff will be linked in the bottom in the description. Dan, thank you first and foremost for coming and spending time with us today and talking with us on Burn the Ship, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
Burn the
Ezra. I
Ship.
appreciate it. Have a good time.